Welcome, everyone. I hope you enjoy our new intro for the turning point. Welcome, Versan, Vandel, and David. How are you guys doing today?
Good, good.
Doing great, brother.
Doing
All
well.
good?
Thank you.
Yeah.
hmm
So, we have a lot of interesting topics for today's podcast. And I think we should be starting with probably the most important one, in my opinion, which is gold, which has been rising and is also linked to the title of this video, as it reads Gold surpasses Euro, a new era for global reserve currencies. So the news is that gold has dethroned Euro and has become the second largest reserve. It's only behind USD. It might come for USD. That's just my personal opinion. And I
hmm
want to know who wants to start. Maybe I will give the word to Versan and you can make some comments about that.
Okay. Well, first of all, good afternoon, everyone. I hope you're all doing well. There's so much just happening around us these days, and it seems like every day there's a new development that really converges towards a black swan event in the monetary system, the financial markets. Obviously, this situation in the financial markets really ties us into some of the other aspects of everything that's happening in the world. And I'm talking about the presidency, the deep state, and several other major topics that I don't want to get into right now. But I think the key to understanding everything that's happening in the world, it really ties us into the financial system. And what we're witnessing is really central banks and financial institutions preparing for a new system. And it's very clear that Ripple is going to play a very central role in all of this with the digital asset XRP. And many of people are already familiar with this, but personally, I think it's worth reiterating because of the growing significance of stablecoins. So that's what I'm going to focus on, how gold and stablecoins really relate. First of all, I want to clarify that the demand for stable coins has surged 50% since last year, and this has been acknowledged by major players like the World Gold Council, which, by the way, is associated with the Bank of International Settlements, the IMF, and the World Bank. Interestingly, the World Bank's, just for some context, their parent organization is the United Nations. So I'm just trying to point out how deeply interconnected these financial institutions are. Now, in 2021, my brother and I, we really were the first to break the story about the World Bank mentioning that XRP and XLM met the criteria for stablecoin classification. And it was really at that point where it became very clear to my brother and I that we were moving towards a digital gold standard. And, I understand a lot of people don't agree with this entirely, but the new technologies that are powering this new monetary system have the power to also tokenize and fractionalize gold reserves for central banks. And I think it's very important to understand that because it was really the World Gold Council that initiated this conversation, the discussion, the need for a gold-backed stablecoin built on the blockchain. Now, they did not specify which one, but it's obvious that the XRP ledger is really going to be the front runner for all of this. And we're already seeing stablecoins being built on the XRP ledger, benefiting from near zero cost transaction fees, scalability, immutability, safety, security, and speed. So what I'm trying to say is the writing is on the wall. Central banks all over the world are buying gold, and they're going to use Ripple's technology to leverage XRP as a means to comply with the Bank of International Settlements Basel III requirements, which is a new mandate that central banks maintain a certain amount of gold reserves. Now, for the central banks that do fall short of those gold reserves, XRP is going to be the alternative. It's clear, it's evident how this situation is really going to unfold, making XRP more of a digital gold. I'm sorry, guys, I'm going on for a while, but it's very important to understand that every time we do get closer to this truth, this reality, which I'm sharing with you, there are forces in this space that try to push us back into confusion and to distort the reality of how things are really playing out. And we see this a lot on Twitter. There are a lot of people that really don't understand how this technology is being integrated. You got Bitcoin maximalists and bots who refuse to ask the right questions. At the same time, they are the ones who are trying to deceive people, and they're not doing their research. This is designed to mislead and deceive others. Now, my final thought, and again, sorry for going on and on, is that stablecoins in the emerging markets are turning to financial technologies like XRP, like XLM for stability as traditional fiat currencies begin to become unstable. And that's a result from the mounting global debt. So this is why it ties into the traditional financial markets. So my point, though, is that as these emerging markets begin to develop, you're going to see them turn to financial technologies like XRP and XLM to stabilize the currencies, to stabilize the global economy moving forward. So I can go on and on trying to connect the dots for you guys, but I think I've said enough. Gold is going to play a very key role in all of this.
Thank you for your thoughts, Versan, and I'll give the word to David and just following the order here on the screen. So,
Well, I think you nailed it 100%. We know that gold has been a reserve tier one asset forever. And central banks are accumulating it at a breakneck pace and watching the price of gold right now at all-time highs ever. Tells you lots about where the temperature is at with this banking reserve system that we've got. And we are looking at an impending total collapse in terms of fiat currency, and they have to position themselves to transition this economy globally into assets that people are going to be able to have confidence in. We know confidence in the US dollar as a reserve currency is gone. It is totally gone. And when you're seeing transactions happening, between a lot of the nations that were once allies with us that are now BRICS nations. I mean, United Arab Emirates, Saudi Arabia, I mean, massive oil producing states that have literally created such wealth for their populations through this system, that was set up back in the 1970s and this and that. They've literally turned their back on the US dollar, at least on the US dollar for sure. Whether or not that is, a political back turn against the country, that's another issue, but certainly on the monetary level, it is definitely, they are done with it. And so we absolutely have to have something that people will generally have confidence in. And where does most confidence reside as a store of value? It has always been gold and potentially silver, but for central banks, gold primarily. And we absolutely know that we're dealing with a transition into this digital economy. We know that the International Monetary Fund is looking at electronic special drawing rights that are going to be tied to distributed ledger technology. We know that Ripple is in the mix of those kind of discussions, has been in the past. Bank of International Settlements trying to solve the interoperability issue between central bank digital currencies when we go there. So the fact that we're evolving into this, the handwriting has been on the proverbial wall. And like you said, you guys have pointed this out since 2021, calling this out for what it is. And a lot of people have come out and either denied it completely in the beginning, now are trying to take credit for something that was already disclosed a long time ago. And this is where you want to be out there as an individual, not just, kind of digesting information as it's spoon fed to you by, and we appreciate people coming in, tuning in, watching and all that. But remember this, YouTube is confluence. That is not research. Really, people want to get out there and dig this stuff out for themselves, because when this transition happens, I think the catalyst for the change will be quick, and it could be any kind of a crisis at any moment. We are right there. The balloon has been blown up so big, it will take the least little pinprick to blow it to smithereens, and then we're going to be in the exact situation of what you described. So I think you nailed it right on the head there.
Thank you. Appreciate that.
well said, David. And Vandal, your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I agree with both of them. And I want to say is that since August, so this month, Germany has the second largest gold reserves in the world with 3,351 tons, behind the United States, which is 8,133 tons. And as David said, they've been accumulating gold for years now, actually net buyers since 2010. There's a very specific reason why they're doing it. It's not just because the currency is debasing and losing its buying power, but because they are aware that the financial system and monetary system is evolving. And as my brother and Andy Scheckman say all the time, that if the digital assets and the financial instruments that we're going to be using for the new monetary system, if they're not backed by something, whether it's gold, silver, commodities, a basket, or precious metals, then it's just a repackaging of the existing BS system we currently have. And that's the thing. It's not going to be the same system we have. That's the evolution right there. It's the combination and synchronization of the digital backed by something tangible and physical. That's the commodities, gold, precious metals, baskets of them. So that's 100% true. And I agree with what you said, Ido. You said that it will eventually pass the dollar. So it's just a matter of time. And what's interesting is Versan mentioned stable coins, XRP, and precious metals. So this just came out just recently that JP Morgan posted on their website that NEOM's global expansion fueled by JP Morgan Payment Solutions. Now, the interesting thing is NEOM in Singapore is using XRP. And this is on JP Morgan's website that just came out. And when my brother was talking about stable coins, he said stable coins are growing very rapidly and adoption is coming for that. This is data that was released recently, just the other day actually, but total stable coin supply has grown to over 160 billion for the first time in 2 years and is approaching new all-time highs. So right now there's just a lot of changes taking place, and gold, I believe, is the ultimate tangible asset to preserve your buying power, tangible asset. And the reason is 10 kilograms of gold would buy you an average home in 1929. 10 kilograms of gold today would buy you almost 2 average homes in 2024. So what does that tell you? Your house priced in US dollars keeps increasing, but your house price measured in gold does not. And that's the power of gold. It's keeping up with currency debasement on an outstanding scale.
Thanks, Vandel. Great thoughts. And I will make a short comment on gold. And I think first, we have to follow the money, right? What have been doing central banks. And it's not only to say Russia is turning to central banks to actually escape from the US sanctions that have been imposed on SWIFT, for example, Russian assets that were in the West. Most central banks in the world are accumulating gold. So when you go to see the reserve of gold, they are doing basically the opposite of what they did, let's say 20 years ago, when they were known to be the sellers. When they detach the gold standard, the central banks simply became sellers of gold. And since 5, 6, perhaps 7 years ago, they have been quietly accumulating behind the scenes, suppressing the price of gold because there is an international cartel that is under control, that takes control of the price of gold. I'll not name them because that can actually get some problems for our channels, but there is a cartel that is doing that. And the fact that we already have new all-time highs of gold, it really communicates that they can't really suppress that much anymore. And that's also now every retail wants to buy gold as well. So we're going to have a gold rush, in my opinion. And it's going to be a gold rush combined with digital assets. Because as Vandel said, Versan always say that as well, we're going to have stable coins that are not backed by tangible assets. I mean, what's the point, right? We already have fiat currencies, which are just paper, that are backed by virtually anything. So we just would have a repackage of the current system. And we know that there is going to be a transformation. There's going to be a change on the system. And the fact that the gold is making new all-time highs by every week, it really communicates that we are also getting closer to this change. Because if they were accumulating that much gold, but the price was still being suppressed, and in my opinion, this is just the beginning for the price of gold. And I also want to quickly make some comments. And perhaps many of you saw I had a discussion on X, because many people said it's impossible, for example, for XRP to be backed by gold. And that's a very controversial statement. However, first, I think it's very dangerous to say that something will not happen for sure when people don't want even these two words in the same sentence, being gold and XRP. You can also talk about the Ripple stablecoin. However, I'll be making some comments on that in the future. I'll come with a thesis that I am creating, but just to make a long story short, from my understanding, that is actually possible. And I spoke with Versan before, not on the literal sense that you're going to come with your XRPs and you're going to redeem a physical amount of gold, but that they might install a peg, and that's not impossible at all. And I think the end game is to have a basket of currencies that are backed by commodities. I think that's the only solution for the financial system. We know that XRP is some sort of a digital gold that can teleport across the globe. And to make a long story short, gold is going to be on the foundation of the new financial system. So I don't feel comfortable at holding large amounts of fiat currencies because, as Vandel pointed out very correctly, you could buy one house with the same amount of gold that you can buy one house nowadays, but the cost to make that house in fiat currency is actually 10 to 20 times greater. So gold is to be set on the epicenter of the new financial system, and so digital assets. And I think the intersection of them is what's going to drive the new global economy. Now, quickly jump into the next subject. We're going to be talking about the Telegram founder. His name is Pavel Durov, and I saw Vandal, you actually shared a very interesting screenshot that he apparently is a World Economic Forum member. And well, I want to hear your thoughts on that. Perhaps in this time, Vandal, you can start with this one, since I have been you talking about that on X, and want to hear your opinions.
The reason I wanted to bring that up is because there's a lot of this negative attention on the opposing side that's targeting him. Okay. So not to get too political, but it's just interesting that he happens to be on the WEF website as a member. Okay. That raises a red flag for me instantly because interestingly, also John McAfee said years ago before he, disappeared, that there's no such thing as encryption with these mega communication companies. Okay. You have Telegram, Signal, a lot of these. John McAfee said, okay, this guy is the guy revealing everything at one time in history. He said in a video that these are all controlled and they want you to believe that they're not, for surveillance purposes. And I find that interesting because, again, he's on the founders on the WEF website. And then again, to get to that level of scalability in, this totalitarian system we have, you have to have the green light given to you by some of the big corporations and the guys in charge. Okay. So to where he got today with the expansion of Telegram, something tells me that there was some coordination and partnerships with perhaps intelligence agencies to use that behind the scenes just to monitor certain information. Okay. And this whole idea of him not disclosing certain information while he's working with them behind the scenes to get to the level that he got at is it doesn't make sense. Okay. I just don't see any logic in it. But the reason I wanted to bring all this up is because somebody said, oh, he can go under the radar because he has about, I think, $20 million in Bitcoin. Okay. Something like that. And
Very
I said,
stupid thing to say. I had to put that out there.
And I was thinking, actually, no. Okay. If they really wanted to shut down the ability for you to conduct transactions and go under the radar and move anonymously with your Bitcoin, they can absolutely trace you down and shut it off. Okay. They have the ability to do that, whether it's through the mining pools, through the on and off ramps, through your transaction history. They have ways to trace it on the blockchain. And that's one of the things is this has been the biggest misconception about Bitcoin, that it's untraceable, untrackable, indestructible. And that's all false. It's such an illusion and it's crazy. But that's all I had to say about that, is that that's false. And that's why I wanted to bring that to people's attention. Now people are thinking, oh, I should just buy Bitcoin, you know? It makes no sense. No, you're not safe if you're trying to fly under the radar.
I have to say something, guys. First of all, Vendel and I talked about this prior to this recording, and I told him that that is the stupidest thing I've heard anyone say before. It really is. And just to throw this out there for the people who still don't understand that both sides are playing the same game. They're playing a show for the masses on behalf of the United Nations. The UN, what they're doing in the world, this is even what Martin Armstrong told me off record, that they were doing a very methodically planned out orchestration of a collapse between society and government. They want to destroy that so they can come in with a solution to do political reform necessary to achieving their government. And there are a lot of people in this space who believe that there's a solution at the end. Don't get me wrong. I don't disagree that there are people out there fighting for our rights, for our freedoms, but they have too much control. Everything is now being digitized, artificial intelligence, and blockchain. There's no privacy in blockchain, to be honest. The fact that we're owning XRP is really us fighting, I mean, playing with the banks at their own game, pretty much. And that's the way I see it these days. There's a lot of information out there that proves that the XRP ledger, the digital asset XRP can resist institutional control to a degree, but there's no privacy at all. And what we're doing is we're aligning our investment strategy with the top 1%. That's pretty much what we're doing here. Those who are owning Bitcoin have no idea what they're in for. Sure, you're going to make gains in the short term, but it's not the long-term narrative. I think they are fooling the masses on a global scale. And McAfee was somebody who really taught me when I was younger. I used to listen to him to question everything. And the whole idea of blockchain was really to solidify their control. And I think we talked about this in a few episodes before. It's all about control and then funneling the wealth to the top 1%. As far as digital infrastructure, this is more about being able to tax you without your discretion. So I just wanted to put that out there. Yeah.
Great comments. And David, go ahead and share your opinion as well.
I think that this is all like absolutely kind of like theater in one respect, because remember Durov here, the guy is a Russian citizen, but he's also a citizen of the United Arab Emirates and a citizen of Paris. You know, he holds passports for all of these countries. So he gets out there, they get into France, and he gets arrested, right? For what? Well, you know, ultimately it's because he's in control of a platform that is, you know, the misinformation, and on that it goes. The article, one of the articles that I was reading, the title of the article really was Elon Musk needs to be worried. Because of course, this is really an attack against the average people. And I think Bersan is right when this is about dividing the governments from the people, and really kind of like, this is just, you know, a psyop as far as I'm concerned. This guy's not going to spend any kind of time. This is not going really anywhere against him, you know, and that kind of thing. But this is just to kind of throw a shot across the bow regarding, you know, these platforms that individuals like you and I are using to kind of disseminate information. And remember, they want to control this narrative in a big, big way. Now, Elon Musk recently, as we know, had a big time interview with one of the candidates running for president here in the US. And this thing got so much flack that it was almost to the point where the EU wanted to ban it completely. Now, if your conviction about your stand, your policy, and that, if it's that weak that it cannot withstand, you know, an opposing view or criticism, then you have to wonder and look at what's going on with the way in which, you know, individuals that are expressing this level of quote unquote free speech, which we know it's really not free. It's going to cost you something for certain if you're going to exercise that as a right. because you'll either get shamed on social media or you're going to get prosecuted, depending on what country you are. If you retweet something, and we know what we're talking about. There's people retweeting stuff, and in certain jurisdictions, that has now become a criminal offense, if you can even fathom that. But that's where I think this is really is. I think this is just a theater. I think this is to kind of throw a shot across the bow. It is a veiled threat, I believe, to, what it looks like in terms of like, what, you and I would go out there. They really want to get people to the point where they ought to be afraid of what they actually put out there. In one respect, I really do believe that, because we're talking about a platform that has been accepted worldwide, and the guy's getting arrested when his private jet lands in France. Like, that wasn't planned, right? Like, there's no orchestration behind that. When did we hear that there were any kind of pending charges, or that people were looking to arrest this guy? There was nothing in there. There was nothing before. It just all of a sudden, bang, happens. And interestingly about the timing of these things, isn't it, when they actually take place? When you got major decisions and being made right around the wide world, narratives going out there, and whether you want to call them selection cycles or whether going on, we're seeing a big shift. And it's absolutely a shift where the few want to control the many. That is the way I kind of look at it. We're going back to, it's like feudalism 2.0. That's ultimately what I believe. Now, I want to touch base on something that we were discussing with her about gold, because this is something that I think is on the minds of a lot of people. It certainly has concerned me. So in the environment where we're seeing massive accumulation with gold from the central banks, remember back in 1933 when there was a presidential edict came out and they confiscated. You could not hold your gold. Now, maybe they will eventually, if it has to be backing the new financial system the way in which we believe. Well, my guess is what they may in fact do is they might come out to really confiscate people's physical gold potentially, but offer them, a digital representation of that, in turn. That would not surprise me to see something like that, because you think that how can it be that a government, and remember this was a presidential edict, go out there and just like that shut the doors off of personal ownership of bullion, and to say that the markets are absolutely being manipulated? Well, they are. Look at JP Morgan faced what, a $977 million fine for what, manipulating the silver market. So, I mean, let's call a spade a spade. Could something like that transpire? I don't know what your guys' thoughts are on that, but it is that there is that kind of potential. But I do believe if and when they do that, this is where I could see a gold-backed digital asset like XRP replacing the physical ownership of it, and that would be equal in value. And I do think that is a potential possibility. But in terms of this, this guy getting arrested there in France, I think it's all a theater. I think it's sheer, utter theater.
Can I make a quick statement? I noticed in the comments people were talking about Elon. Well, I have done so much research on Elon in the past. And yes, he's a puppet. Elon, his real name is Elon. And when you translate that into Hebrew, it translates to God. I know his mother's history. I've done so much research on his father, which he had relationships to old money with the Rothschilds banking dynasty. So there's a lot of stuff I don't want to get into here, but you guys got to go do your research on him. He's not portraying the man that he seems to be. I can promise you that much. This is a global narrative, and that's why all the banks and all the institutions, including the WHO, got together when the pandemic was initiated, you could say. And they all played the same narrative. That is not a coincidence. They didn't stand in lockstep for no reason. It's because they wanted to make the changes that they needed to get us to where we are now. Look how divided we are since 2020. Again, going back to the UN's initiative to bring in political reform. Many people don't know how to put the dots together. Instead, they go cheer for another individual out there, and they're screaming in the crowds like, he's going to save us. He's going to save us. Listen, I understand people are afraid out there. Believe me, sometimes I get afraid too. but that's their weapon. It's real. It's fear. But if we can all rise up to the challenge and see through the bullshit, I can promise you the only way things are going to get better is the unity of the people. But we are more divided than ever. And they've even put this out there. This is part of the narrative that there will be civil war because not one side will accept the results of a rigged election to begin with. So that conversation can go on and on. But I told you guys we should not get too political for just to be safe. Maybe next time we can talk on these and work around it. And
can I say something though?
Yeah. And then we got to move on, Edo.
All right. The perfect way to create civil war is for both sides to work together and say, hey, let's pretend to rig this election. Okay. So yeah, that's really what's going on. I mean, you can't get into the club unless you're chosen. Okay. If they don't want you in, they take you out like Saddam, like Gaddafi, like there's a whole list. Okay. But yeah, they take you out. They can do it. If they could do it 20 years, 15 years ago, trust me, they could do it today without you even knowing. Okay.
That's right.
All right. And make it look like an accident. That's how they operate. By the way, Elon was hanging out with Netanyahu just a few times recently. Okay. So it's on camera. It's a video. So what do they think? What do you think they're talking about? Sports? I mean, come on. People. So,
hard not to go down political rabbit hole. You better stop overhead.
Guys, you know what's funny is we can go on and on about this, and it's hilarious because it's a never-ending conversation. And I'm telling you, that's why we're all here together, is we can kind of fill in the blanks for each other. It's funny.
Yeah, but you guys go ahead. What's the next thing we're gonna jump on now?
Yeah,
I would just connect with something that David's.
Oh, you're muted.
Sorry about that. No, now you're muted.
Oh, now it's fine.
Sorry about that.
To tie something that David has said about still coming back to XRP and gold. And one of the arguments, and that's all related to what we were speaking about, is that gold is not in control of a single government. Therefore, some people say that it's impossible to peg XRP to gold. Well, they are very naive to underestimate how much central banks can collude to arrive to a common goal. Well, they did that in 2019. I think if anyone had any doubts about what they are capable of doing, and I agree, if I would go back when I was a teenager in 2000, let's say 5-10 years ago, I would think it's impossible, right? That the central banks are going to collude and they're going to all take the same measures. And it doesn't matter if you are in Russia, in South Korea, in South America, in Venezuela, in Argentina, every single nation in the world has followed exactly the same script. I think that tells you everything. That's a huge lesson over there. And as far as per the Telegram founder, that's why I love to be on this podcast. That's why I love to be with you guys, because that's something that was kind of on my sidelines. I was not paying close attention. But my first reaction was to think, wait a minute, I think that's kind of an attack towards the freedom, and I was thinking like that's like the West trying to control. But then you guys just said some things here, and I just completely finally saw it. I was not paying enough attention, and I say that's a political theater. And then I just connected that to the fact that first, well, someone with that level of influence would not commit such a mistake, meaning that if there is a 0.1% chance that France would come in and arrest him, he would not be there on the airport with his private jet. And even very interesting enough, they added some sauce to that because he was hanging out with some 23, 24-year-old Russian woman, or I don't know her nationality, well, that's irrelevant. And she was posting the locations of him everywhere on Instagram, right? I mean, someone with that level of influence would never be that naive. That's all part of the theater, and I'm glad I am with you guys here that I was not paying close attention to that, but that is very clear to me right now. And we can jump perhaps on the next subject, which I think is more relevant to everything that we always speak about rather than talking about the Telegram guy, which comes down to Ripple's. It's, I think, 1,700 non-disclosure agreements. Yeah. And who wants to begin? I think we can go following the order here with Bersan.
Yeah. So Regarding the non-disclosure agreements by Ripple, first of all, I was not surprised by this. This isn't news to me. In fact, we even have a video on our YouTube channel where Brad Garlinghouse mentions that Ripple has made some announcements while there are many others that he hasn't made. So again, no surprise, especially when you're talking about orchestrating a global shift in the monetary system, moving everything into tokenized assets onto some new technology. You're not going to reveal everything to the public. You're not going to reveal anything. In fact, people have to go do their research. And I wish people could really see. We got to write a book about this one, David, though. I wish people could really have seen how my brother and I were in the early days first discovering this and started to dig into this. It took us really a few weeks to dive deep and find the documents that we needed to build the confidence and understand pretty much how this was all going to unfold in real time. I still remember the moment when Vindel and I looked at each other and we said, holy shit, this is it. But the point I'm trying to make is that we had to dig deep to uncover this information. And we also had to reach out to many people to talk to them. And that's really why we started bringing people on the show. But I want people to understand we didn't bring these people on the show to answer and provide answers to the questions we already knew the answers to. They actually came on so we could get their take on what we've already uncovered. So my final thought that secrecy is always the name of the game, and those who really do their research will prosper, because owning XRP and some of these other technologies is really like owning a piece of the global money supply or global value, if that's how you want to put it. So it's really that simple.
Yeah, I agree with that. I agree.
I'll just give the word to David. Yeah.
Yeah, I agree with that 100%. Owning XRP, as far as I'm concerned, is owning a piece of the new economy, the new global economy. This represents, and I've said this so many times, I genuinely believe it represents probably one of the greatest wealth transfers the world is ever going to see. And the thing of it is, when you look at these non-disclosure agreements, I mean, a lot of these organizations are absolutely head first. They want to get out there, and tokenization of real world assets is going to be massive. You had David Schwartz and Brad Garlinghouse not too long ago saying by the end of 2025 that this is going to represent a massive part of the economy, this real world asset tokenization. And what are we talking about when we're talking about real world asset token? Well, we're talking about the tokenization of securities. We're talking about the tokenization of real estate. We're talking basically the tokenization of almost anything and everything that you can possibly imagine. Now, these big banks, one thing I've encouraged people to oftentimes do is go to the patent office and research, just type in distributed ledger technology. And you look over the last 6 months, who's been filing patents under distributed ledger technology for various things? It's majority of these major global banks. Do you not see the handwriting on the proverbial wall? And yes, a lot of these banks have NDAs with Ripple. Why? Because they've been in on this practically from day one. They've been in on it from day one. They've known about it from day one. All this kind of stuff. And this is where, even with respect to the lawsuit, I understand where the idea comes from, that potentially there was, maybe even some collusion between Ripple and the SEC in respect to this whole lawsuit, because it has suppressed and dragged this thing out in a way that we would have not have imagined. So is there potential there? I don't know factually. But it really does surprise me, because in July of 2023, we get a decision XRP is not a security in the secondary market. Then what happens? And the price pumps what, goes to 92 cents or something like that, and it literally gets pummeled all the way back down. That does not make market sense when you deal with a supply and demand issue. The case gets resolved. The price barely moved. Now, I understand I am still a long term, because look, we are looking down the road. I am not literally shaken 180 bitty bit, but there is absolutely a coordinated move to shake people out of their positions in this asset. Zero doubt about it. Absolute zero doubt. And yet I believe it's probably going to be one of the ones that is going to literally transform, the fortunes of many. And absolutely. So it's no surprise that in the court case, because that's where that was finally acknowledged and disclosed, is the 1,700 NDAs were disclosed in documents that were provided during this court case. And, you know, it just did not get the major attention that it deserved, but it's worth noting. And you're going to see, I absolutely believe 100%, a lot of major banks and players that most people were thought against Ripple that are actually going to be already out there ahead of the game and got these NDAs. And it would not surprise me if you're going to see a bunch of Wall Street banks that are right in line with those. Not at all. Not in the least bit. I actually believe that it's going to come out eventually.
Can I make a quick statement? I mean, I have to, right? First of all, I was looking in the comments and people are talking about the price, right? First of all, you got to understand that Ripple's true value lies in its protocol. The protocol is what sets the rules for all these transactions to occur. And then XRP is really just the driving force that unlocks the liquidity available for global demand, which is going to come very soon. But the price fluctuations does not shake my faith, and it should not shake your faith either. You got to understand that XRP's true value is what lies beyond the charts. We're not there yet, guys. Like, so you got to be patient. And I'm telling you, when they are ready and there's a demand for it because they're not propping up the system with fake liquidity associated with the global reserve currency, the dollar, all of this is going to fall into place. But what have they been doing since the beginning? They have been setting the stage for when this is ready to occur. And everything is almost in place. So we're around the corner. And I think the election has something to do with this. I mean, the empire has to have this. And that's what Glenn Beck even said once. And don't get me wrong, I don't cling to everything he says. In fact, I don't even cling to what David Schwartz has to say. I do my own research and I critically think for myself and propose to everybody else what I'm thinking, what's going through my head. And it seems to make sense. We've been proven right for three years now. And I'm humbly saying that, but it's all in the documents. Some of these documents talk about how all of this must be 100% operational and ready to go by 2025. We're just around the corner. So let's just see what happens. Everyone needs to be patient. Forget the price is what I'm trying to say.
Agreed.
Yep. Yeah. I did want to say that so non-disclosure agreements are very common in the business world with corporations, especially financial institutions. Even more so when you have executives that are playing a role in innovation or technologies that are reshaping the financial system and the monetary system. So non-disclosure agreements, very common. And no matter how much credibility some of these executives have for the company, whether it's Ripple, Stellar, whatever, you just have to know that strategic misdirection is a very common practice, and it's deliberate. They know more than you think they know, but they can't tell you and they can't disclose everything, and that's just the way they conduct business at that level. So yeah, just want to say that people need to not take everything they say at face value, take it with a grain of salt, and just be aware that this is how the world works. They can't tell you everything because the level they're playing on, they're literally participating in reshaping the financial system. This is a huge role. So they're not going to tell you everything. And whatever they do tell you, I think it's just a strategic misdirection so that they don't disclose any sensitive information and to give you something to cling on to, because you'll keep asking questions. You'll keep wondering what's going on. They have to give you a narrative. Okay. This is taught in behavioral economics and psychology. They have to give you a narrative to make sense of the complexities and make sense of things. Okay. Something to cling on to.
Yeah. And if I can add also, they try to misdirect people with the idea that there's another XRP. What are they, stupid? No, there isn't. This is misdirection. And what they do is they'll back it up with significant evidence, data that's all fabricated by top engineers and people to convince you, like, here's evidence of something that isn't compared to what something that is. Strategic misdirection, exactly like somebody said in the comments there. So I'm very happy to see a lot of very smart people in here. It's amazing. It really is.
And Versan, nowadays, they don't really need a lot of sophisticated methods to actually brainwash the people. I think that's quite simple. They can just drop a AI generated article and the people just believe it. And that goes for, I would say, 90% of the crypto community, with all of respect.
Yes. No respect, man. The truth is, a lot of people on Twitter, on X, you could read it. When they use the term poised, that's Chat GPT. I already know. Okay. You can't fool me. Okay. I see a lot of people taking things from AI and putting it out there like it's their own thoughts. And what scares me, I talked to Simon Hunt about this the other day, is that artificial intelligence is, I understand it has a lot of benefits. All right. But it's taking something, and I'm seeing this already. As a researcher, I have noticed this. This trend is going to accelerate and it's going to continue. It's taking critical thinking away from people. If AI can think for you, then why the hell do you need to think? And that's what's happening.
And it's
So
also
I'm seeing a lot of
saturating.
the emergence of stupid people. It's incredible.
100%.
Really
It's also saturating social media, because suddenly everyone can become sort of a creator. That would diverge us from the main topics here, because also a lot of people, let's be honest, they can't even go live and make a streaming because everything they do is from ChatGPT, or actually they're reading a script. So it's very difficult. That's why it's very unique to go. That's why it's very unique to go live. Notice how there is not a lot of people out there who go live, because that requires a certain knowledge that you can't fake with ChatGPT, unless you think us here are AI generated, which is clearly not the case.
Not the case. No, I'd be more handsome if it was.
Hey, you're very good looking already, but I have a final thought. I'm so sorry, guys. Is that I've said this so many times to a lot of the people in the comments here, that anyone reading a teleprompter is not providing news. I'm sorry. Real news comes from within. If you understand something and you can research and articulate it and try to make sense of it, connect the dots, that's a researcher. Most of these guys read teleprompters. You could see it. I'm sorry. It's a fact. But
yeah,
whatever.
it's pointing the facts. I agree. And just coming back to our discussion.
Yeah. Sorry.
I have made a post. No, it's okay, Versen. I would love to hear you, man. And I made a post a couple of days ago, because a lot of people say it's like a conspiracy theory that David Schwartz is under NDA. He has openly said that. And he has said that he's under NDA with the National Security Agency. So you can just start connecting the dots. That's not debatable. That's a fact. You can track that down to his original account. So it's not like Photoshop. And a lot of people fail to understand, because they're taking everything he says at face value. And he's actually playing around with the words. A lot of he says is relevant, but a lot of what he says, you can just understand that he's not allowed to go further. And it comes down to what Vandel said, that they somehow bringing these complex topics and they have to create the narratives, and people just start to pick up sides. And a lot of people are being misguided, and I think sometimes it really comes down that you have to take responsibility for the research. You don't have to wait someone else to do it for you. You don't have to ask artificial intelligence, which, by the way, is pretty much controlled by certain companies, and they want the same ideas to be propagated over and over again. So you have to do your own research. I mean, go to see what they are doing behind the scenes. What is the IMF doing? What is the Bank of International Settlements doing that they are not telling to the public? So that's the key. And just giving you guys the hints on how to do the true research on this ecosystem.
The thing with all that, oh, sorry, go ahead.
No, go ahead, David.
I just want to comment on what you said. Like, the biggest thing is when people think, or when we come up with these ideas or whatever, and things like this, is when you have something else like artificial intelligence doing doing the heavy lifting, or what we would classify as the heavy lifting for you, what you're really doing is dumbing down a population, because logical thought is systematic. It just doesn't happen. You have to train your mind to be a critical thinker. Now, people think it's critical thinking to hold a point of view or an opinion or whatever. Well, there's a terminology in when you study theology, it's called apologetics. And it basically means, what do you believe, but more so, why do you believe it? Most people can get out there and you can start having a conversation about any kind of a political subject, almost verbatim. You literally hear the narrative that's coming out of the Fifth Estate. They have not really gone out there and done genuine critical thought where they've done what you said. And the problem with that is this: most people don't want to expend the effort to do it. They don't. Why? Because they have been trained to be spoon fed information right from kindergarten all the way through college degree. And this is where, a lot of the stuff that our students are being taught is absolute fallacy. Yet they believe it as if it's gospel truth. Why? Because they've accepted, they got positive affirmations. Hey, they wrote their college papers, they get A's if they have this attitude. Hey, you fail if you don't. And I've seen that, literally seen that, where people are doing that. And this is where people are losing. Most people, when it comes to their goals, and this is a true fact, when it comes to goals, most people that don't achieve them, it's not because the goal was unattainable. It's because they lost the resolve to do it. And that's why fewer and fewer people are really out there cutting the trail, being the pioneers, invention. If it wasn't for the fact that people really use critical thinking and deductive thinking, do you know how few inventions would have actually brought us to this place right now? It wouldn't have happened. And they are literally dumbing down a society to depend on, excuse me, AI and different mechanisms to literally unfold a world that these folks want. They're gearing us, they're corralling people into that. And it's kind of like, when Rome fell. Well, hey, they had all kinds of circuses, didn't they? People were being entertained galore while the literal world around them was falling to absolute pieces until eventually the whole empire totally collapsed from within. And I think that's what we're dealing with right now.
Totally agree, David. And just to conclude, I'm not saying people should not, to a certain degree, benefit from using AI. I just give an example. I might do the whole work for a YouTube video by myself, do my own research, everything, plan it by myself, and at the end, I might use AI to give me the title. I mean, you're still doing the heavy lifting, but you're benefiting from the technology without giving away your critical thinking. And that's what I think is fundamental, because if you just get used to AI, that's going to dump you down to a degree that you are not able to even decide for yourself anymore. And it's already happening. I mean, it's not we're talking something in the future. Most people are using that in this way, and they're just giving away their critical thinking.
Yeah, your
So let's
creativity.
get on the next subject, as we are already 52 minutes here. And by the way, we have already
This is great. We can keep going.
So I think this one, it was brought by Vandel. So I think you are the right one to start, and it's about Jeremy, I don't know how to pronounce his name, Jeremy Powell's statements, and you want to elaborate on that, please, Vandel?
Yeah, so Fed Jerome Powell confirmed a dramatic pivot to monetary easing, and this was on Friday. So what does this signal to us? That the Fed is basically going to give up an effort to reduce inflation, which is obviously above their target. And the interesting thing here is that this deliberate failure will basically create profound implications for the US dollar and for gold. So with gold prices already at new record all-time highs, what do you think this will do to the gold as they continue currency debasement? It will potentially drive gold even higher. So I thought this was important is because when they're basically saying they're going to cut rates at some point. So we're talking about interest rates now. This means at some point, as they are cutting rates, they're going to create more money. Call it adding liquidity into the system or quantitative easing. But that's coming. That's going to debase the currency even more. So your fiat currency will buy you less. And that's going to continue to drive up gold prices and asset prices. On that note, and on that note, what's interesting is what happens when they do a rate cut. Okay, so if we look at history, after the first rate cut in 2001, so 2001 they had the first rate cut, the S&P 500, it went up for about 3.5 weeks. After that, it dropped about 19.53%. And in 2007, the rate cut took place again. The SPX topped, so it went up for about 3.5 weeks, and then it crashed 57.77%. So my point is, it's just something for investors, whether you're in the stock market or crypto market, to be very strategic with this uncertain time we're in right now, because we have never had a point in history where the Fed started cutting interest rates in a bull run in this crypto environment that we're in. So this will be uncharted territories. So my point is, have some cash or gas on the side, dry powder, because there could potentially be more volatility and a correction, potentially a bigger correction, before the leg continues to shoot up. So just to give a little perspective there. What do you guys think?
Just a side note, as we speak, markets are red. So there is already a lot of volatility. It's happening quite kind of now. And yes, please go ahead, David. Just wanted to give this quick update.
Yeah, no problem. What I was going to say, just to add on to that, of course, when they do rate cuts like that, it pushes money into risk on assets, right? And that's going to happen. And when that happens, I do believe we are going to see one of the biggest spikes we have ever seen. I really believe that, because they're not just talking one, they're talking about 3 before the end of the year. Now that's in very quick succession, to see these kind of cuts. That more than likely is going to result in a absolute frenzy, on buying equities, buying these digital, the prices are going to go. That's my belief. Now, when they do, what I do believe, though, is what's coming next. I mean, if you look at the Dow on the 100-year and you see where we are and that kind of thing, and you're looking at these charts, you're talking about a major potential crash in the future. Prior to that, I do believe we're going to see a big, big boom. Now, when that crash happens, I think that's going to be the catalyst to switching over to a new system, because it's going to be so catastrophic of a crash that I think the world will not be able to even stand against it. It'll be so debilitating. Most people, it will make the Great Depression look like nothing. Because in the Great Depression, the unemployment was, 30%, something like that, 30%. Can you imagine the world where you're seeing a 60 or 70% unemployment?
That's right.
It is going to be mind-bending. And also remember this, personal debt. Back in the Great Depression, you didn't have people carrying all kinds of credit card balances, all this kind of stuff, big time car loans, big time mortgages and all that. The world was not like that. And yet, look at the suffering that was in place, people lining up in bread lines and soup lines and things like that. If we see an economic crash, collapse of what magnitude that some of these economists like Jim Rickards and others have brought up, and Bursan, you've interviewed some really fabulous people there that have really talked about what's coming down the road economically on a global level. They are going to have no choice but to transition us into a new system, because people will die. It'll be that bad. And that's something we have to think about. Now, I'm not trying to fearmonger, but you just have to look at the 100-year chart, and you can literally see it climbing up like like being on Price is Right and watching the little climber go up there till he falls off the cliff. And I think that crash is coming. But I absolutely agree. I think before it happens, we're going to see one massive, major pump. That's my thinking anyway.
Yeah. If I can go ahead and interject, there was some comments. First of all, I should address very shortly. Very important thing someone said, that they're coming after our children, and they're trying to turn men into women. I do want to mention something about that real quick. First of all, people need to understand that this is more of that divide and conquer strategy. But the idea here is to degrade society. And if they can do that successfully, they can eliminate the continuity between men and women. Then men cannot get women. As a result of that, there's no more family, because the continuity between men and women is all about raising families, having children. So they're trying to eliminate that. I thought I should put that out there too. Now, as far as Jerome Powell's statements, every now and then this guy, they put him out there, talk about interest rates, talk about the economy. And I want people to understand, it's very important what Vendel and David said here, but interest rates really doesn't get to the root cause of some of the issues we're discussing here. And that's why I really think most mainstream economists and so-called experts are absolutely full of shit. As soon as Jerome Powell started speaking, personally, I already had my position in various robotic technologies and artificial intelligence technologies. And right after his speech, those markets shot up. And the same thing is happening with the crypto. They both surged when he gave his speech. Now, what I'm trying to make a point is that people need to understand that when they float him out there, his words, his statements are actually dictating, artificially dictating the movement of these markets. So if you understand pretty much how the traditional financial system and markets work, it's really not hard to make money while they keep going back and forth. But there is a catch to all of this. Like my brother said, that every time they do this, they're devaluing the dollar, they're making the rich richer, they're making the poor poorer. And this really is a whole game about funneling all the wealth to the top 1%. And they're going to keep playing these games as long as it serves their interest. But like David said, how we're switching to a new system, this may be the final hurrah, because what I've learned through the research is that this system is not even working for the 1%ers anymore. So my final thought on this topic is that as we get closer to the election, what you're going to see is the central banks, they're going to try to muster and pull together as much liquidity as they can from the dollar to possibly prop up the markets. So don't be surprised if you do see a lot of the markets continue to boom in the very short term as we approach the election.
Thank you, Versan. From my perspective, and I have said this already, and sometimes, unfortunately, we have to reiterate and we have to repeat ourselves. But when Bitcoin was near the all-time high, I pointed out that there is less volume, there is less liquidity in the markets compared to the previous all-time high. And that means we have lower support levels, which equals volatility. So we have a lot of volatility. If the markets are continuously going up because of the cut of interest rates, and then they're going to drop, as historically there has been a 20% in the past after the pump, for example, Vandel has said that in the beginning. It's difficult to predict because we have to see the broader perspective, and there are so many things on the table right now. We have the US elections, we have the lower liquidity on the markets. It's also a factor to be considered. It's also the first time, I think, the lower interest rates when we are in the middle of the bull run, if we can call that a real bull run, but I think it's reasonable since Bitcoin has made new all-time highs. So there are many things that we have to consider. So it's really, if someone tells you 100% what's going to happen in the next 90 days, I think they are lying. I think it's all probability. You know, if you ask me, I do think we're going to have some sort of explosive movement upwards, but perhaps that will come with a correction. A lot related also to what's going to happen to the US elections. Black swan events can also happen at any time. So it's just like they can do like this, and they can decide which direction the markets are going to actually go. And they have many cards they can actually pull. So you have to be prepared for both scenarios. Don't allow volatility to actually destroy your long-term strategy, because even, let's say, in the case of Donald Trump or Kamala, whoever actually wins this election, of course, on the short term, we're going to have an impact in crypto. For both sides, they're going to affect in different ways, but the fundamentals, they simply don't change. I think you all agree with me that all of this noise, in the end of the day, is irrelevant, because they are actually coming with a new system, and the new system is going to be implemented. Doesn't depend of who is in power. It doesn't depend of how is the bull run by the end of 2024, or how is going to be the markets on the beginning of 2025, because that's different. That's a different year. It's a different cycle from the previous cycles, because before we didn't have distributed ledger technology being adopted by financial institutions, being recognized by the IMF, being recognized by the Bank of International Settlements. That was pretty much on the talks, but right now we have implementation phase, which is taking place, with XRP already being the first cryptocurrency fully regulated. So I have to say that I'm not concerned about what's going to happen. Of course, I'm concerned in the sense of what are going to be my moves to maximize profits. I'm not reading my XRPs, by the way, but of course I'm going to be playing with the markets. I work with crypto, but I think for the average person, you have to be prepared for both sides. And most important, leave your XRPs on cold wallets, so that's gonna safeguard your wealth in the next years. I think that's the way.
Yeah, can you hear me? Okay. So what I was going to say is I agree with you guys and with David that we're going to have a phenomenal boom, going up in the crypto market. We're approaching it's the 4-year cycle. It happens every 4 years. Bitcoin halving, elections, bull run, liquidity comes in. But what's interesting is every single crisis is 100% orchestrated, measured, and controlled, and happens right after massive liquidity is injected. So how do we know this? Because you can actually see it. There's the central bank liquidity. So it's called the Global Liquidity Index. You can actually see it on TradingView, and there's other platforms to actually look at it. And the Global Liquidity Index is basically, it shows you a consolidated view of major central bank balance sheets globally. And what's interesting is every time a crisis happens, it's right after massive liquidity is injected, and you see it on the chart. It's incredible. So right now it's sitting just doing nothing, which means this is my belief, and it's based on my macro analysis. There is going to be, I feel like, a high probability right around the corner. It could be any time, any day now. There is going to be something that takes place. Yep. The charts are telling me that. Yep. And that's when the liquidity will come in. This something that takes place could have any number of catalysts behind it. It could be interest rate cuts. It could be a black swan event. It could be something, a banking crisis, whatever. But something is coming, and the liquidity index is telling me that. Because historically, if you look, 2020, we had one of the most phenomenal crypto bull runs, right? Well, guess what this chart was saying right here? This is when the liquidity shot up. And it was weeks before the crisis took place. And actually in 2020, we were having a crisis already, a banking crisis. Mm-hmm. They had to justify and have a very believable excuse in order to print money and inject liquidity into the market. So whether COVID happened or not, we were having a crash. Yeah. That was the cover up, and it had to be at the same time while simultaneously achieving multiple goals at once. But that's what happened. So I think there's going to be something that happens very soon. And I still agree with David and Ido and all of you guys that we are going to have a phenomenal crypto bull run and see humongous asset appreciation in a lot of these assets, especially crypto.
Can I throw something in there? What's going to be the catalyst to pump liquidity into the markets? It's going to be what's happening, the escalations you see in the Middle East. I've been following that very closely, which was going to tie us into our last subject, by the way, is cybersecurity, cyber threats. We saw like a week ago that the central bank of Iran got attacked. It had a big attack on their financial infrastructure. So this could be an excuse to retaliate. You see what I'm saying, guys? What they're going to do is probably set the stage for a situation. And just to add some flavor to what my brother said, we were having a banking crisis in 2019, December. The repo markets were failing. They were crashing. And then shortly after, they pumped liquidity into the system. And then we had the pandemic be announced on March. That's not a coincidence. That's all strategically timed, like he said. But as far as cybersecurity, I think that is really one of the most critical issues in today's digital age, because what we saw with CrowdStrike is really just a test run, I think, for what could come. We've also seen warnings by the World Economic Forum and many of these other corrupt institutions. And some of our sources are saying, friends in the Middle East too, are saying that there could be a major cyber attack on Western financial infrastructure. That is like very possible, in order to do what they did and blame Iran as a pretext to go back to war. That could be a way to pump liquidity into the system, have that last hurrah, very similar to what we saw in 9/11. Many people are not aware of this, but it's really the intelligence agencies who are behind this, including the CIA. Their involvement is absolutely no secret. But as our lives become increasingly tied to digital infrastructure, cell phones, artificial intelligence, it's very important, even digital assets, to protect this infrastructure and to protect your digital assets. And that's why I always tell people, like my brother said earlier, you have to take the steps to mitigate these risks. One of them is owning gold, having some cash, silver. That's a really good start. Also important to store your crypto on hardware wallets offline, off the internet. So that way it's not compromised. So those are my final thoughts, guys.
Thank you, Versan. Yeah, we hit 1 hour and 10 minutes, so let's jump on the final thoughts. And by the way, we're almost hitting 3,000 people live, which is great.
That's
And
great.
then thousands of people are going to watch the repetition as well. I think we're doing a great work here. And I want to pass the word. Can start with David, and then we go to Vandel for the final thoughts.
Well, my final thoughts would be this, guys, don't leave this to chance. This is probably one of our greatest only opportunities. This space represents probably one of the only times in history where you could get retail that could front run institutions in a big, big way. And the way I kind of look at it is don't leave it to chance. You want to get out there and position yourself to absolutely benefit. Look, a lot of people in that last run, I've talked to many of them, they rode it all the way up, and guess what? They rode the whole thing all the way back down. And they saw the gains. They didn't realize the gains. You have got to be strategic. You need a strategic plan. And this is where, the folks on this panel, we all have various programs that we get out there for minimal, I mean minimal cost, to help individuals develop that strategic way of thinking and planning, centered around what your goals are, what you want to achieve. I know that Versan and Vandel, they have an amazing program. You just want to go to blackswancapitalist.com. Is that right? And you check out that.
Thanks.
You hear my advertisement, every video I ever do, at the end of it, I got out there. My point is this: whether you choose us or somebody else, do not miss getting yourself ready for what's about to happen. Don't think that, oh yeah, when the price is high, I'm going to sell. Most people don't, guys. If you're not strategic about it, you don't execute that plan. You've got to be so focused on that plan. And that's why it pays to get out there and get that financial coaching. Look, it's not financial advice. You can literally go out and look up what financial coaching is about: the how and the why, not the what. And it's to prepare you to be as strategic as you possibly can. So I throw that out there because it's probably one of the best. And look, once this thing happens, I can tell you, at least for me anyway, I'm probably not going to be doing it anymore. I suspect these guys, we're going to move on to other things. We want you to make it, really want you to make it. And that's why we're out there doing this. And whether you call it a shameless plug or what, it's vitally important. And I want to that's my last statement.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you, Dave. Go ahead, Ido.
I was just going to pass the word to you. Yeah, I took some time to unmute the mic. That's why.
Oh, okay. I was just going to say thank you for those kind words, David. And yes, I encourage everybody to take advantage of the opportunities you have. What you do today will determine your future and your tomorrow. And time is not on your side at this point. So last words is that if you had the opportunity in 1990 to buy into the stock market, you probably wouldn't be here right now. Okay. That would have changed your life dramatically in a positive way, and your families. But you're here. So if you're looking for a similar opportunity, crypto and digital assets, blockchain technology is handing you the platter right now. But you have to be very strategical and take action, because if you don't, you're not going to reap the rewards. But it's here. We are literally living through the 1990 again right now today for the crypto and blockchain space. This is how early we are. It's almost equivalent, and we haven't even seen mainstream full adoption and regulations. But when that happens, I'm telling you right now, it's going to be too late. It's like buying Tesla at $3,000. Okay, you're not going to change your life. You're not going to make life-changing wealth. By the way, the stock market on average doesn't even keep up with currency debasement, which is between 8 and 10%. So you're barely breaking even in the stock market. Digital assets and crypto is the best performing asset class in existence since 2013. It provides the best risk-adjusted reward out there, and nothing will beat it until regulations and full mainstream adoption comes in. And when that happens, that's it. It's over. The decisions you make today will determine your tomorrow. So that's all I have to say. And I wish everybody the best of luck and much success to all of you.
Amen.
Nicely said, Vandel.
Yeah.
And from my side, I always reiterate that, but it's never enough. Be very careful with fake accounts of the four of us. Yesterday, another person has actually been scammed. He DM'd me, and it was too late because when I saw the message, he already sent a couple thousand of XRPs to someone that was impersonating myself. And then I spoke to this person. It's like he works like cleaning pools, and he worked very hard for that money. It actually broke my heart, I promise you. But fortunately, it's something that we can't stop. But the only thing I can tell is, guys, please don't send your cryptos to someone online unless, I mean, you are 100% sure, which is not the case 100% of the times, right? So you should never do it. Take care of your seed phrases. Don't keep it on digital wallets, especially if you have social media accounts. You can be sure you are a target. There are malicious people out there. Don't have a digital copy of your seed phrases. Don't click on any links. People will DM you. They will say the most creative bullshit ever, like job interview. They will ask you to install third-party softwares, and a lot of people are getting scammed. And it's the fundamentals, but I never have enough to reiterate, because every week, every day, someone DMs me, I just got scammed. And I say, look, I feel sorry for you, but unfortunately, at this point, there's nothing I can really do. So please be very responsible. Know that the only way you lose on this game, if you have XRP, is by giving away your custody, or by losing your seed phrases, or by being scammed. So please be very careful.
Yeah, nicely said. And I just want to tell the audience, like, thank you all for all your support, for supporting what we're doing here. And we're humbled by your presence. We really are. And you know, it's important that we have this community and try to reach as many people as we can. So please help us out with that. So thank you.
Thank you, everyone. I'm going to tap to end here.